everyone. I wanted to do a video on the books that I've read recently, like in the past year or two. I also wanted to talk about the books that I want to read. One of my habits that I want to kind of take up this year is read more. I love watching book videos on YouTube, so I kind of wanted to start it myself. I've read a good bit last year. So yeah, I wanted to kick things off actually with Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Pride and Prejudice was my favourite show, the BBC version, the 6-hour long version. I love the 2005 version as well with Keira Knightley, but you can't beat the Colin Firth in BBC. Actually, on New Year's Day I did a whole marathon. I watched the whole 6 hours in one go. I love it. I grew up watching it and I love Jane Austen, but I never actually read the book, so I decided to read it last year and it did not disappoint. I'd say I would rate it like 5 out of 5. I can't fault it. I'm currently reading Emma, which I love, and Emma's more funny. Pride and Prejudice is definitely more of a romance. If you love the show and you love the movie and you've never read the book, I would highly recommend reading the book, because it kind of shows what the characters are thinking, and obviously you don't get that in a TV show or a movie. It has like Mr. Darcy's train of thought, and that's kind of a nice surprise. It's the first Austen I've read as well. I remember trying to read it when I was small, but the English was a little bit too difficult when I was small. I suppose there is that element of the English is slightly different because it is like, what, 200 years old, so yeah, the English is slightly more difficult, but it was still easy to read and easy to understand. It's a classic for a reason. Like, Jane Austen was a genius. If you like romances and like a little bit of drama, it's a very good book. Yeah, you don't really need me to to tell you that Jane Austen is amazing. But yeah, the book caught me by surprise. Like, I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. Like, it's funny, the characters are funny. Just Jane Austen has this amazing ability to kind of create characters and to really make them silly sometimes, or to really, she just creates characters so well. But yeah, the strain of consciousness, like what Elizabeth is thinking, what Mr. Darcy is thinking, is, you know, it's cool. It was nice to read that perspective when I've just watched the show my whole life. Yeah, I think what I love about it too, I love Elizabeth Bennet. What's amazing is that she's such a likable heroine, but she has faults. That's what I quite like about it. It's like, it kind of shows how she was prejudiced at the beginning, but yeah, just I could not fault it. I couldn't put it down. I'm so shocked at how much I did enjoy reading it. I also got my copy from Waterstones. I'll try to link it down below if I can find it. But this beautiful cover, beautiful like edition of it, and it looks gorgeous on my bookshelf. But yeah, it is a classic. Another book I read, and this is by no means an obscure book either. I read Normal People by Sally Rooney, and obviously this is a big show now as well. I've actually never seen the show. I read the book. I think the book was nominated for the Man Booker Prize, or it won something, or it was nominated for something. I think it got a lot of hype around that before it was a show. So I read it kind of, I think, towards the end of 2019, just before the show came out anyway, but I still haven't seen the show. But yeah, this book, if you enjoyed the show, I'm sure you'll like the book as well, because I think the show was very true to the book. Again, I need to watch it, so I can't really say. And what I loved most about it was, so basically, if you don't know the story, it's about a girl and a boy. They're doing their last year of school in Ireland. It's based in Sligo, and then it's based in Dublin, and it's just kind of their late teens, early 20s, and they're a couple, they're not a couple. It kind of goes between different sections of their lives and their early adulthood. It's just an amazing story. You will be hooked. You can't stop reading it once you start reading it. What I loved about it too was the characters do their leaving certificate in Ireland around 2011, I think, roughly. And that's when I did mine. If you're Irish in your late 20s, I would really recommend it, because you're going to be like, this was, you know, it's very relatable to an Irish person, especially if you did your leaving cert, like kind of like the early 10s, you know, around 2010, 2011 and on. It just talks about Irish school culture, university culture, romances, relationships dynamic. What I loved about it's very Irish, and it was really, really relatable. Yeah, that was a surprising find. It was surprising that I think I looked up Sally Rooney, and I think she is in her late 20s herself, and I think she's from Dublin, so that is pretty cool. Like, it was cool reading something that is totally something that I do, like the college culture that I kind of experienced myself, so it was really, really cool. The writing style is a bit strange. It doesn't put commas around. Usually in a book there's commas when someone is speaking. In this book it doesn't. It says, Connell says. So it was hard to kind of get used to that. The first few chapters I was like, oh, what? But you kind of forget about it after a while. I'm not really sure what the reasoning for that was. It was interesting, but yeah, I kind of just like forgot that the commas weren't there after a while. There's a few things about it too. Yeah, like it is quite graphic. Like the sexual scenes are quite graphic in it. If that's not your cup of tea, that's not going to be for everyone. There's also a few, I don't want to say this without spoiling it, they kind of bring up issues, and if you've read the book or watched the show you probably know what I'm talking about. They bring up issues without really ever addressing them or ever coming to a conclusion, and I think that's kind of the point. But I was also kind of like, why is this here? And like, particularly there's an issue that Marion goes through, and it's, yeah, I'm not really sure, but I think that's done on purpose, that it's kind of like maybe a coping mechanism or something. But it is a very interesting book. Just if you're in your late 20s and you're Irish, please read this book. It's really, really good. I'll definitely read more from Sally Rooney as well. I know she's come out with a couple of books as well, and I need to watch the show. Yeah, there was a couple of scenes, a couple of things in it I wasn't dying about, but very, very good still. I would definitely rate it. I hate rating books actually. I maybe rate it about 4.5 out of 5. Also, by the way, I don't have any of these books with me. I wish I could like hold it up to show you, but I'm currently home with my family while I'm in lockdown. All my books is back in my house where I live, or where I rent, so I'm just gonna insert pictures here. But the next book I read recently was Little Women, and I picked it up initially because of the movie coming out. I think it was 2019 when the movie came out, but I didn't get around to reading it till after the movie came out. But again, excellent book. Excellent book. Classic for a reason. I did remember watching the movie. I think it's Winona Ryder and Christian Bale, and then obviously I watched the Emma Watson, Saoirse Ronan one as well when it came out in cinemas, and they're excellent movies. Yeah, Little Women, I have my gripes with it, and then I loved it too. I really, really, really loved it. I have some kind of character gripes. Obviously, I hope I'm not spoiling anything, but this book has been out forever. But yeah, I find it was kind of like nearly too wholesome sometimes. Like it was kind of too smushy in some places, to a point where it's not very realistic, but it's still very heartwarming. Obviously, it's about 4 sisters and kind of like their lives, so it's kind of their teenage lives into their early 20s as well, and like their marriages and the things they go through, and their dad's off to war, and they have a neighbour called Laurie, and he kind of like joins their family, and him and Joe, the main character, are best friends. It is a lovely, lovely story. Yeah, there's a couple of things that happen in the book that I'm like, oh, why? And I also Laurie is like my favourite character, and I kind of agree with him the whole book. Even when he makes his confessions to the person he loves, I feel like I agree with him. Like, I'm kind of like, yeah. Also, I think the way they develop Amy, the youngest sister, as well, when she grows up, she's immediately likeable, and I'm like, I still don't find her likeable. Please give her a redemption arc or something, you know. So yeah, I still loved it though. The story overall is really nice. It's unique. The book itself I read about for maybe 4 out of 5. I enjoyed reading it. I enjoyed the movies. I enjoyed the story. It's a good, if you love classics, if you love Jane Austen, if you like Jane Eyre, if you like classics, I would recommend it if you haven't read it already. If you haven't seen the new movie, please go see it. Timothée Chalamet is a Laurie and he's amazing. I love the spin on marriage in it, and that Jo feels like she doesn't need to be married, and that's very refreshing. I think it was probably very ahead of its time when the book came out, you know, like where being married is be all and end all, when in reality it isn't. I really, really love that side of the story, and I like that they kind of elaborated on that a bit more in the movie when the movie came out. I think Saoirse Ronan did a great job. But yeah, the book, it's a good story. I loved it. Yeah, if you are into classics, I would definitely recommend it. Or my next one is the Harry Potter series. I read Harry Potter when they were coming out, so back in the early noughties. When book 3, 4, 5, once they started coming out, I would read them like everyone else in the world. I loved them. I can't put them down. I like had to read it from start to finish without sleeping. Like I specifically remember reading the last book and missing a night's sleep just because I needed to know how it ended. They are actually amazing books, and if you haven't read them yet, I totally recommend you do. What made me want to read them again was living in Edinburgh, and obviously Edinburgh is where J.K. Rowling wrote books. There's like a Harry Potter shop every other building. You have the Elephant Cafe where she started writing it, of the Balmoral Hotel where she finished it. There's just kind of Harry Potter everywhere in Edinburgh, and it kind of just made me realise, I was like, oh, I better read them again. So last year in 2020 I've read the whole series, but it's taken me about 2 years because I've kind of been reading them very slowly and like watching the movies once I finish a book. And it was very interesting reading them as an adult. And what's lovely about Harry Potter is that you kind of grow up with him. So he's 11 at the start and he's 17 at the end, and the first few books you do see it through an 11-year-old's eyes, and then at the end you do see Harry's life through a 17-year-old's lens. You know, it does kind of grow up with Harry, which is cool. It's really cool how J.K. Rowling did that. Yeah, it's funny, even like the little romances and the things that happen and what the teachers think and stuff. It's interesting seeing it from a adult's perspective now. Reading it and realising Harry had to do so much when he was 17 is kind of crazy. Obviously I don't think I have to tell the story, do I? The boy finds out he's a wizard, goes to magical school. But yeah, it was really interesting reading them from an adult's perspective, and I had the same feeling once I started reading them. I had to finish them. And it's quite nice because I kind of like forgot like lots of details because I only read them when they came out, and I've seen the movies obviously, and I've seen the movies a couple of times, like they're usually on at Christmas. But yeah, I forgot a lot of details, and I feel like the movies did a good job for the most part, kind of telling the story as well. Like if you've just watched the movies, again, read the books. If you like the movies and you're like, Harry Potter's okay, and you're wondering why everyone is so crazy about it, read the books. Just read the books. So yeah, my favourite one growing up was definitely the fourth one, and I still love the fourth movie. I just feel like I love the tournament. I love everything that happens. I think it's at the end of the fourth one is kind of like the turn of when it's kind of like a cozy story to kind of a serious one. But I actually loved the third, Prisoner of Azkaban. When I read that and watched the movie, I'm like, this is the best one. This is the best one. And I think that's quite known within people who really like the movies or really like Harry Potter. But yeah, I felt like I had to read them being in Edinburgh. So yeah, actually moving on to books I want to read. My brother actually got me the illustrated Chamber of Secrets, illustrated by Jim Kay, but obviously it's still the same story. But yeah, it just has beautiful illustrations as you read it. Like you have the flying car there in Hogwarts. It's actually stunning. So yeah, I definitely want to get Sorcerer's Stone and start reading these along with the illustration. But I think I'll give it some time. But yeah, I do want to do that. I think when it comes to the illustrated versions, I think they're only up to the Goblet of Fire. I think Jim Kay is working on these. So yeah, this will be fun. So yeah, from rereading Harry Potter, it kind of put me through this desire to want to read all the books that I read when I was younger. So I actually do want to read a series of Unfortunate Events. I have my original hardbacks here that I got when they were coming out. I'm not sure when these came out actually. 2002. I think I read them later than 2002 though. So yeah, I've got the book that shows a scene from the movie. It was the Jim Carrey version. And since this has been made into a Netflix show, so I really do want to read these again. So yeah, this came out in 2004. Yeah, that was 2004, 2005 when I read these originally. And I love them. They're a little bit dark. They're a little bit like gothic. If you know the story, it's a little bit Tim Burton-esque. I suppose that's the best way to describe it. It's about 3 orphans, and there's this distant relative called Count Olaf, and he's trying to pursue them. They were left a massive fortune, and he wants that fortune, so he just kind of keeps pursuing them, and they keep having unfortunate events. And Lemony Snicket, the author, obviously that's a synonym, but what's the term when an author uses a different name? Is it synonym? I'm not sure what that term is, but pseudonym. I think that's it. He writes himself into the book as well, and there's actually 13 books, like the unlucky number. So it's quite interesting, and I remember reading it. Throughout the books, they kind of, Lemony Snicket kind of like explains what words mean, and I really did notice when I was younger reading these, like my vocabulary was getting better. I would definitely recommend these if you know someone, daughter or son, who's maybe in their tweens, early teens. I think this is a really good book series. It's very unique. It's a bit dark, it's a bit creepy, it's still very wholesome at the same time. So yeah, I'm excited to reread them and see what I think. Obviously they are children's books, so I don't know how I'm gonna enjoy them, but we'll see. I remember loving the movie. The movie is based on the first 3 books, and this book has the first 3 books in them. It is kind of a little bit gross, but I'm glad I still have my original copies. I think the Netflix show has Neil Patrick Harris as Count Olaf, so I'm excited. I love him as an actor, so I'm excited that he did that role again. This show came out a while ago. I think it came out 2 or 3 years ago, but I still haven't gotten around to watching it because I want to read them first. So yeah, that's something I really want to do in 2020, is read all of the 13 books. So yeah, I really want to read like I read the Narnia books, I read a lot of Enid Blyton, Mallory Towers specifically, and then I read like the typical teenage ones. I read Twilight, I read Hunger Games, anything that was kind of like majorly big, I read them. So yeah, I'd love to reread the books from my childhood. Yeah, this, I'd say A Series of Unfortunate Events was my favourite. The book I'm currently reading actually is Emma by Jane Austen. I'm nearly done. I have a few chapters to go. The book's actually divided into 3 volumes. All 3 volumes are in the one book. I'm trying to, obviously I enjoyed Pride and Prejudice so much that I wanted to read all of Jane Austen's work, and this is amazing. I'll do a full review I suppose when it's finished. It's a lot funnier than Pride and Prejudice. It's a lot more humorous. Again, the characters are just, her ability to create characters is just amazing. Emma is such an interesting character. I think Jane Austen thought nobody would like her, but I actually really like Emma. The movie came out obviously last year. It's actually the last film I've seen in the cinema before the pandemic. It's Anna Taylor-Joy, I think, plays Emma. She's amazing. The movie is amazing. It's the same actress who's in the Queen's Gambit. So yeah, this is what I'm reading currently. Yeah, I'll do a full review I suppose when I'm finished. Another book I want to read I actually picked up was The Magpie Society. So this is by Zoe Sugg Urzuela and Amy McCulloch. I didn't realise this was a young adult, but it is actually a young adult kind of murder mystery. I've heard good things, I just didn't realise it was a young adult when I bought it. I was like, oh, a murder mystery, cool. But it is young adult. I think it's set in a school, so I think this is probably aimed more towards your late teens, early 20s maybe. But yeah, I'll give it a go. I've heard mixed to good reviews on it, so this is definitely something I want to read very soon. I think my order is going to be finish Emma, A Series of Unfortunate Events, and then this. So it might be a while actually. I have 13 books to read. But yeah, that's something I really want to read. I have so many books that I want to read. There's so many. I have so many back in my house. But yeah, if I read all of these during this lockdown, I'll be doing well. So yeah, that's all my books I've read in the last year or two. I haven't read an awful lot, but I definitely want to read more, as I've mentioned. I really want to dedicate time this year to reading and kind of reading new stuff, reading things that I used to love when I was really young and I forgot about. Yeah, I'm really excited for some of the things I have. So yeah, I started a Goodreads as well, and I'll link that down in the description. So yeah, I think I'll start sharing what I've been reading. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.